the weight of being good. You've spent most of your life being good. A good wife, a good mother, a good woman. And yet in the quiet moments, when the house is still and the world stops asking for your attention, you feel it, that quiet ache, like something in you has been waiting to be seen. You've done everything right. You've held families together, forgiven when no one said sorry, and smiled when you were the one breaking inside. But somehow, you feel unseen. Not because the world forgot you, but because you forgot yourself. Carl Jung once said, "What you most need will be found where you least want to look." Maybe what you need now is not to be better, not to give more, but to come home to yourself. This video isn't about how to make someone love you again. It's about how to stop disappearing in the name of love. And maybe, just maybe, when you remember yourself, you'll remember the kind of woman no one can ever forget. The mask of goodness. You were never born to please. You were trained to. From the time you were a little girl, you were taught that being loved means being good. Not loud, not angry, not too much. You learned that peace in the family depended on your softness. That harmony at home was your responsibility. So you smiled through the tension, and you called it maturity. You swallowed your truth to keep others comfortable, and the world applauded you for it. They said, "You're so patient. You're so understanding. You're such a strong woman." But what they didn't see was the cost of that strength. Because every time you silenced your truth, a small part of your soul slipped further away. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive in a world that fears authenticity. At first, it's protection, but slowly, it becomes a prison. You start to forget what your own voice sounds like. You start to say yes by reflex, even when your heart screams no. And at night, when you finally lie down, you feel the emptiness of a woman who has performed love, but not received it. There's nothing wrong with wanting peace, but peace bought with self-betrayal is not peace. It's silence, and silence, over time, hardens into sadness. Jung said that what we call fate is often just the unconscious running our lives. And that's what happens when you live too long behind a mask. You start mistaking approval for love, and you start calling exhaustion purpose. But beneath the mask, there's still a woman, the one who used to laugh without permission, who used to dream without guilt, who used to believe that love could be soft and safe. She hasn't died. She's waiting under the layers of should and must, under the weight of good. And if you listen quietly enough, you'll hear her whisper, "I want to come home." You see, that's the thing about goodness. When it becomes performance, it stops being virtue and starts being survival. You weren't meant to survive your life. You were meant to live it. So the next time someone calls you so strong, ask yourself, is that strength or suppression? Because one brings peace, the other buries it. The prison of politeness. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much, but from holding back too long. You know it well. That weight in your chest when you want to speak, but swallow the words instead. That tight smile you wear to keep the peace. That nod you give to avoid the argument. It looks like kindness from the outside, but inside it feels like disappearance. Carl Jung wrote, "Whatever you repress doesn't vanish. It returns disguised as fate." Every time you silence your truth to keep the peace, you don't make the world calmer. You just make yourself smaller, and I know why you do it. Because you were taught that love is fragile, that if you speak too loud, it will shatter, that if you ask for too much, people will leave. So, you learn to become careful, polite, predictable. But what no one told you is that politeness, when performed for survival, becomes a cage. It's a quiet form of self-abandonment. You disappear not with a scream, but with a smile. You keep everyone comfortable, except yourself. You fix everything, but no one notices that you're breaking. And then you wake up one morning, still loved, still needed, still admired, and realize that no one really knows you, because you haven't shown them who you are in years. The cost of constant composure is authenticity, and the cost of authenticity is connection. When you hide behind politeness long enough, your relationships become clean but cold, safe but shallow. The truth is, people can't feel you when you're always managing their comfort. They might say you're easy to be around, but what they mean is, you never make me face myself. And that's not love. That's control disguised as care. I know you've been called too sensitive. I know you've been told not everything needs to be said. And somewhere along the way, you started confusing silence with peace. But peace that demands your silence isn't peace. It's fear dressed beautifully. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it destiny." That's what happens here. You start thinking, this is just who I am, the calm one, the peacemaker. But it isn't your destiny. It's your conditioning, and the body knows it. That's why the headaches, the sleepless nights, the hollow feeling, even after you've done everything right. The body keeps the record of every truth you swallowed to stay loved. So tonight, I want to ask you gently, where have you been too polite for too long? Maybe it's in the marriage that feels more like a treaty than a home. Maybe it's in the friendships where you give and give, but no one ever asks, how are you really? Maybe it's in the mirror where you meet your own eyes and realize you've been keeping peace with yourself by pretending not to see the ache inside. Whatever it is, you don't need to tear the walls down tonight. Just notice them, because noticing is the first crack in the prison. Jung called that moment the beginning of consciousness. It's when the mask starts to slip and the real self finally breathes. You don't have to become loud to be real. You just have to stop betraying yourself in whispers. The next time your heart tightens before you say yes, pause. Breathe. That hesitation isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's your soul asking, can we please be honest now? And maybe the bravest thing you can do this week is to answer that question. The shadow and the mirror. There's a moment when a woman stops trying to be seen and starts learning to see herself. That's when everything begins to change. Because the truth is, no one can truly see you until you can face the parts of yourself you've been hiding. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the sum of everything in us we've denied, repressed, or feared. Your anger, your longing, your sensuality, your truth, all the pieces you were told were too much. All the emotions you packed away to be the good one. They didn't vanish, they became your shadow. And here's the paradox. The more you reject those parts of yourself, the more they end up running your life from the dark. You think you're choosing kindness, but sometimes it's fear of being disliked. You think you're choosing strength, but sometimes it's fear of being vulnerable. You think you're choosing independence, but sometimes it's just fear of needing anyone again. That's the trick of the shadow. It hides behind your virtues. Now, here's where the mirror appears. Every man carries within him an image, what Jung called the anima, the inner feminine that lives in his unconscious. It's not a person, it's a pattern. a dream he doesn't even know he's dreaming. And when he meets a woman who reflects even a fragment of that hidden image, he feels something ancient stir, not attraction, recognition. She becomes a mirror, showing him the beauty and the chaos he's carried inside all along. That's why some women stay in a man's mind for decades. Not because she said the right thing, not because she was flawless, but because, through her, he saw himself maybe for the first time. But here's what no one tells you. You can't mirror someone else's soul. If you're afraid of your own reflection to become unforgettable, you must first face the woman in the mirror. When no one is watching, you must meet the parts you've exiled. The anger you were told was unladylike. The desire you were told was dangerous. The grief you were told to hide. Because until you own those shadows, they'll show up in every love you chase. They'll leak through your smiles and speak through your silence. And men, they'll feel it, not consciously, but unconsciously. They'll sense the split. They'll sense the missing wholeness. They'll feel drawn to you, and yet not anchored, as if something's missing, something they can't name. That something is not your beauty, it's your integration. Jung said, a woman who has faced her own darkness becomes a light that cannot be extinguished. You see, the feminine that truly obsesses a man isn't the one who shines the brightest. It's the one who carries her light and her shadow with equal grace. She is not trying to be perfect. She is whole. When you've faced your own shadow, you no longer need to prove your goodness. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You stop performing tenderness, because your tenderness now comes from truth. You stop performing confidence, because your power now comes from peace. And something happens. You walk into a room differently, not louder, just clearer. And everyone feels it, even he. The man who once made you doubt yourself senses it. He looks at you and can't explain why. You seem both familiar and out of reach, like a song he loved long ago but forgot how to sing. That's not seduction, that's reflection. That's the soul recognizing its mirror. So tonight, I want to ask you something, not as a lesson, but as an invitation. When was the last time you looked at yourself and didn't rush to fix what you saw? When was the last time you sat with your sadness as if it were a friend? When was the last time you let your own truth be louder than your fear of being alone? Because the woman who can do that, who can hold her own gaze without flinching, becomes unforgettable, not because of what she gives, but because of what she embodies: presence, depth, wholeness. And that is the kind of energy that doesn't just attract, it transforms. You are not meant to be the woman who pleases. You are meant to be the woman who awakens. And every time you meet your own shadow with grace, you take one step closer to becoming her. Childhood roots, the birth of the mask. Before you ever learned to please, you were just a little girl who wanted to be seen. You didn't want attention. You wanted presence. Someone who looked into your eyes and said, "You don't have to try so hard. You're already enough." But that moment never fully came, did it? So instead, you learned to earn what should have been given freely. You learned that when you were quiet, people smiled. When you were helpful, they stayed. When you hid your sadness, they called you strong. And when you said, "I'm fine," no one asked again. That's when it began, the first fracture between who you are and who you must be to be loved. Carl Jung called this the beginning of the persona, the mask a child wears to survive in a world that doesn't know how to hold her truth. You see, the mask isn't born out of vanity, it's born out of fear. Fear that if you were too honest, love would leave. Fear that if you were too loud, you'd be punished. fear that if you needed too much, you'd be a burden. So you became careful. You learned to watch before you spoke, to measure every emotion, to smile even when your chest burned with unshed tears. And everyone said, "She's such a good girl, so mature for her age." They never saw that every compliment was a brick in the wall between you and your own soul. Years passed. The good girl grew into the dependable woman, the caretaker, the one who always knows what to say, the one who fixes everything except herself. But inside, that little girl never stopped waiting for someone to see her, not for what she does, but for who she is. And maybe that's why you get tired even when you do nothing wrong, why you sometimes feel invisible even when surrounded by people who need you. Because love, when earned through performance, never truly fills the soul. It only teaches you to perform harder. This is not your fault. It was the only way you knew how to stay safe. Jung believed that every adaptation begins as protection, but when the protection stays too long, it becomes a prison. And that's what's happened to so many women who learned to be small so others could feel comfortable, women who learned to be perfect so no one would leave, women who learned to be strong because no one else knew how to be gentle. They grew up believing their worth lies in their usefulness, and in that belief, they forgot their being. But here's the miracle Jung saw. What becomes a wound in childhood can become wisdom in adulthood, if you dare to turn and face it. That means the very part of you that learned to hold the world together is also the part that can finally let it go. That little girl in you, the one who always made sure everyone was okay. She's not asking for perfection now. She's asking for presence. She doesn't want you to fix her. She just wants you to notice her. To say softly, "You don't have to be good anymore. You just have to be real." Because that's where true inner healing begins. Not by chasing light, but by holding the child in you, who was once afraid of the dark. And in doing so, you reclaim something sacred. The power you gave away in exchange for love. The moment you do that, the energy around you changes. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing peace, because you finally found it, not in perfection, but in presence. So tonight, if you feel tired of being the good one, close your eyes and imagine her, the little girl you once were, waiting for someone to see her. Now let that someone be you. And when you do, you'll feel it, a quiet warmth in your chest. That's your soul saying, "Thank you for coming back." The soul fracture, losing the self. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she looks around and realizes she has everything she was told to want, and yet something inside her feels missing. You've been the steady one, the strong one, the reliable one, the woman who shows up no matter what, and you've done it beautifully. But somewhere along the way, you stopped showing up for yourself. Carl Jung called this the fracture of the soul. When the outer life and the inner truth no longer touch, it doesn't happen suddenly. It's quiet. It happens in the small compromises. The daily, "it's okay" when it isn't. The gentle smiles that hide the silent tears. The way you reach for your phone because silence has become too heavy to sit with. Until one day, you wake up and realize you've been living your life. From the outside in, you've become a role, not a person. The mother who must always be calm, the wife who must always forgive, the friend who always listens. And maybe that's why you feel invisible, because no one can see you anymore, not even you. Jung wrote, "The greatest tragedy is to lose the self without even noticing that it's gone." And maybe that's where you are now. You're not lost because you failed. You're lost because you've been everything to everyone, and there's no space left for you to just be. That's what the fracture feels like. A quiet ache that doesn't go away. A sense that life keeps moving, but you've stopped somewhere behind it. You look at the woman in the mirror, and you can't tell if she's tired or just empty. You keep functioning, but you don't feel alive. You keep caring, but you no longer connect. You keep giving, but nothing fills you back. That's not depression, that's disconnection. It's the soul trying to speak through fatigue, through the lump in your throat, through the tears you don't let fall. It's whispering, please, come home. You see, when you betray yourself long enough, your body starts to keep count. The body becomes the language the soul uses. When you stop listening, that's why you can't sleep even when you're exhausted. That's why your chest feels heavy when you're surrounded by people you love. That's why, sometimes, even laughter feels like acting. It's not because you're broken, it's because you're full of everything that's not you. And there's no more room left for your truth to breathe. But here's the secret, the one Jung hinted at in his Red Book. The soul will break before it bends to a lie. That ache in you isn't punishment, it's guidance. It's your true self refusing to stay buried any longer. Because the soul doesn't care about being liked, it only cares about being real. So maybe that heaviness you feel isn't the end, it's the beginning. Maybe you're not falling apart, maybe you're falling back together. Every crack, every tear, every sleepless night where you whisper, I can't do this anymore. Those aren't failures, they're invitations. Invitations to stop living as the woman the world expects and start living as the woman your soul remembers. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to be okay all the time. You don't have to keep holding everyone else together. Because healing doesn't begin when everything's fixed. It begins when you finally stop pretending that everything's fine. So, if you feel lost tonight, don't run from that feeling. Sit with it. Let it be what it is. Because in that silence, the real you, the one you left behind years ago, is finding her way back home. And when she returns, you'll recognize her. Not because she's louder, but because her peace will feel like truth. The awakening. When the shadow begins to speak, there comes a moment when the noise around you begins to fade, and what's left is something quieter, but truer. It's the sound of your soul waking up. For years, you've silenced it. You buried it under responsibilities, under expectations, under the endless list of who you had to be. But now, in the stillness, you begin to hear a whisper. It doesn't come with words. It comes as restlessness, as tears you can't explain, as a deep knowing that your life can't stay this small anymore. That's not crisis, that's communication. Carl Jung called it the voice of the shadow, the part of the psyche that holds everything we've refused to feel. It speaks softly at first. In the beginning, you mistake it for fatigue, for boredom, for sadness. But it's not asking you to collapse. It's asking you to come alive. For so long, you've been the listener for everyone else. Now, your soul wants you to listen to her. She doesn't want perfection. She wants honesty. She wants you to admit that the life you built doesn't fit your spirit anymore. And that's okay. You're allowed to outgrow versions of yourself that were born from survival. You see, awakening isn't beautiful at first. It's messy. It's confusing. It feels like standing in a room that once felt safe, but now feels too small. You start saying no without knowing why. You start crying over things you thought you'd moved on from. You start longing for something you can't name. Because your soul remembers a freedom your mind has forgotten. That's how the shadow speaks. It doesn't use language. It uses longing. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's what you're doing now. You're turning toward the parts of you once ran from, the anger you suppressed to stay polite, the grief you swallowed to stay strong, the passion you buried to stay respectable. They're all coming back, not to haunt you, but to heal you. You see, when the shadow begins to speak, it doesn't destroy you, it restores you, because every piece of yourself you once abandoned comes back carrying wisdom. Your anger teaches you boundaries. Your sadness teaches you depth. Your desire teaches you truth. Your fear teaches you courage. And when you can hold them all without shame, you start to feel whole again. This is the awakening, not a sudden epiphany, but a quiet remembering. A remembering that you are not just a role. You are not just what others expect of you. You are a living, breathing soul, with a rhythm, a pulse, a truth uniquely your own, and the world has been waiting for that truth. So the next time you feel the ache rising, don't rush to push it away. Sit with it. Ask it, "What are you trying to show me?" And listen. Really listen, because that ache is not your enemy. It's your awakening in disguise. Jung said that every woman, when she meets her shadow with compassion, awakens the sacred feminine within her, the part that no longer seeks love to be whole, but gives love because she is whole. You don't have to do anything grand. You don't have to start over. Just start listening to the quiet voice that says, "This isn't who I am anymore." That's your invitation. That's your return. And when you finally honor that voice, you'll notice something. The world won't fall apart, but the old version of you will. And that's okay, because she was never meant to last. The integration. Learning to say no without guilt. When you first begin to awaken, freedom doesn't feel like peace. It feels like guilt. The first time you say no, your heart races, your voice trembles, your body whispers, "You've done something wrong." Because for years, you were trained to believe that love and approval were the same thing. That kindness meant compliance. That strength meant silence. So now, when you begin to choose yourself, your nervous system mistakes it for danger. Carl Gustav Jung called this the process of integration, the sacred work of bringing your inner and outer worlds into alignment. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming honest. Integration means learning to live your truth without apology. It means choosing peace that includes your needs, not peace that demands your absence. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable at first, because every cell in your body still remembers what it felt like to be punished for your boundaries. But this time, you're not a child trying to keep love. You're a woman learning to keep herself. Each time you say no, you teach your body that truth is safe. Each time you rest instead of rushing, you remind your soul that peace doesn't have to be earned. Each time you disappoint someone instead of betraying yourself, you heal a generation of women who were taught that their worth depended on obedience. This is what Jung meant by individuation, the slow, steady becoming of who you truly are, not by rejecting others, but by returning to yourself. You see, integration isn't a loud process. It's quiet. It happens in the pauses, in the deep breaths before you respond, in the soft refusal that carries no anger, in the stillness after you've said what you mean and didn't rush to explain it away. That stillness is power, because for the first time, your peace isn't built on pleasing, it's built on presence. At first, people won't understand. Some will pull away. Some will call you selfish. Some will test your silence just to see if you'll break. But slowly, the ones who truly belong in your life will start to adjust. They'll meet you where you stand. Because healthy love recognizes healthy boundaries. And you'll start to feel something you haven't felt in years. Clarity. You'll begin to breathe differently, move differently. You'll feel lighter, not because life has become easier, but because you've stopped carrying everyone else's peace. Jung said, "Guilt is the price we pay for growth." But with time, that guilt fades, and what remains is grace. Grace in your no, grace in your pauses, grace in the way you stop explaining yourself to be understood. And when you stand in that kind of grace, the energy around you changes. You no longer attract chaos, because your energy no longer speaks confusion. You no longer chase love, because you've become love in motion. The woman who once said yes to everything now chooses carefully. She knows that every no is a prayer, a way of saying, "I choose what nourishes me." And each time she does, her life rearranges itself to match her truth. You see, integration isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning of real living. It's where you stop fixing yourself and start inhabiting yourself, where boundaries are no longer walls, they're doors. And the only people who walk through are the ones who can meet you in your wholeness. You are no longer the woman who says yes to survive. You are the woman who says no to stay true, and that is your quiet revolution. Because when you no longer fear your truth, the world begins to move differently around you. Opportunities open, peace deepens, love becomes softer, truer, calmer, and one day you'll look back and realize you didn't lose anyone, you simply stopped losing yourself. The transformation from pleaser to whole. One morning, you wake up and the silence feels different. It's not empty anymore, it's alive. You make your coffee, you move slower, you breathe deeper, and for the first time in years, you don't feel the need to rush into anyone else's world. You just exist. It's a strange peace, soft, quiet, unfamiliar, but it fits you like a home you forgot you built. Carl Gustav Jung called this self-possession, when the soul, long exiled by duty and fear, finally returns to her rightful place. You no longer crave validation, you crave truth. You no longer chase love, you create space for it. You no longer fight to be understood, you rest in the knowing that you understand yourself. This is what transformation looks like. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's gentle like a sunrise. No one noticed until the light filled the room. The woman who once said yes to everything now chooses carefully. The woman who once felt guilty for resting now treats rest as sacred. The woman who once thought she had to prove her worth now walks through the world knowing she is enough simply by existing. You've stopped trying to earn peace, you've become it, and the world begins to reflect it back. People respond to you differently, not because you've changed how you look, but because you've changed what you radiate. You've stopped speaking from fear and started moving from truth. You've stopped chasing connection and started attracting resonance. That's the beauty of individuation, the process Jung spoke of again and again. It's not about becoming something new. It's about returning to what was always true. You are not the woman who needs to be chosen. You are the woman who chooses from fullness, not from fear. And that fullness, it's magnetic, because the energy that once scattered itself, pleasing others, has returned home to you. It's in your voice now, deeper, slower, steady. It's in your walk, unhurried, grounded. It's in your eyes, the kind that see clearly but judge softly. That's the kind of feminine energy that doesn't seduce. It remembers. It remembers the woman you were before the world told you to shrink. It remembers the light you dimmed to make others comfortable. It remembers that love doesn't demand performance. It demands presence. You are whole now, not because life became easier, but because you stopped abandoning yourself to make it easier for others. And in that wholeness, something incredible happens. You stop begging for love. You start embodying it. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This is what he meant. You no longer seek love as rescue. You become love as truth. You no longer use kindness to hide your pain. You use honesty to heal it. You no longer perform goodness to be seen. You live in integrity to be real. And now, you are the woman that cannot be forgotten. Not because you're flawless, but because you're authentic. Because when people stand near you, they feel something ancient and rare. Peace that isn't borrowed, and love that isn't afraid. You are the mirror, not of what the world wants, but of what it's forgotten. And that's why, when you walk away, they don't remember your beauty. They remember themselves through you. You are no longer the pleaser. You are the presence. You are no longer performing love. You are living it. And that is what it means to be whole. You've spent so many years being good, being everything for everyone, being the reason people heal, even when no one noticed what it cost you. But here's the truth you were never told. You were never born to please. You were born to wake up, to remember what you were, before the world taught you who to be. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And you've done that. Slowly, tenderly, courageously, you've walked through your own darkness and discovered light not at the end of the tunnel, but inside yourself. You've learned that peace doesn't come from control, it comes from surrender. You've learned that love isn't found in performance, it's found in truth. And you've learned that healing isn't about becoming someone new, it's about remembering who you've always been. You are no longer the woman who hides her pain behind strength. You are no longer the woman who mistakes exhaustion for purpose. You are no longer the woman who believes love must be earned. You are the woman who has faced herself and lived to tell the truth. That truth doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be lived. Because when a woman lives her truth, she becomes a mirror for every other woman who forgot hers. So tonight, when you turn off this video, I want you to sit quietly for a moment, breathe, and whisper to yourself, I am allowed to stop trying. I am allowed to rest. I am allowed to be me. Because your healing was never about becoming untouchable. It was about becoming real. And now, you are. You are the woman who no longer needs to chase peace, because she is peace. You are the woman who no longer needs to be chosen, because she already belongs to herself. That is what it means to come home. If this message found you when you needed it most, it's not by accident. Your soul called for it, and when the soul is ready, it always recognizes what belongs to it. So if this spoke to something inside you, don't keep it quiet. Tell me in the comments, which part of you woke up while listening? Your words might be the light another woman needs tonight. Tap like, not for me, but as a quiet yes to your own healing. Hit subscribe and join a space where your shadow isn't judged, but understood. Because here, we don't chase the light. We learn to see in the dark until it becomes light on its own. You were never born to please the world. You were born to meet your soul. And tonight, you finally did. This is inner balance psychology, where your darkness is not a flaw, it's your way back to light. Subscribe, Stay close and keep walking home to yourself